Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello and good morning to you, my friends, on this beautiful hump day. 33 degrees here at the old radio ranch, and still looking like beautiful fall out there. Not quite winter yet. Fingers crossed. Anyway, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and good morning to all of you out there in Radio Land. We're ready to go today. We've got a busy morning planned for today. We're going to be talking in hour 2 to Representative Ben Carpenter, who is now a candidate for state senate. Ben Carpenter will be joining us and talking about his candidacy and his fiscal plan and taxes and everything. It'll be a good discussion coming on later on in hour 2 this morning as we get ready to go and take things on today. In hour 1, we're going to have a conversation about ranked choice voting. I want to get down into the weeds a little bit on it. I know everybody's like, "But it's the simplest thing you ever seen. It's just, it's so good." But is it really? Is it really? I want to talk about that for a few minutes and talk about some of the details on it. And then I'm going to open up the phone lines to you. And I want your personal take on what you think, your experience. What are your thoughts on it? Is it good? Is it bad? And we'll get your take on that here in a little bit later this morning. But first, some housekeeping. We got to let you know. I am going to be brace yourselves. I'm going to be off the air on Friday and Monday. There's going to be alternate programming across the state Friday and Monday. Both in the interior and down on the peninsula. And that's because I got a thing going on. And so just in case I was not able to get back to the studio and I didn't want to have to haul all my remote rigs around and everything else, I thought it would be better just in case. I'm just going to take Friday and Monday off. And I'm sorry. This is not something normally I do in October, but it is what it is, right? You can only do what we can do. We will be back for that full week coming up to election. Next week is the last full week before elections. So we will come back and hopefully we'll have some newer guests. I'm trying to get some folks in here who we haven't had on or haven't been on in a while. And so we're going to do our best. But this coming Monday and this coming Friday, we're going to be off the air, and there will be alternate programming in the meanwhile. So there you go. It is it's crazy. Voter turnout. I will mention before I get into the ranked choice voting thing. Voter turnout has been pretty sparktacular across the country, and especially here within Alaska. The early voting is off to a banger start. Long lines. Eager voters across the nation. More than 18 million Americans have already cast their ballot in person or by mail. As of yesterday morning, Alaska hadn't posted any updates, but did report 56,000 absentee ballot requests And the lines for getting into the Division of Elections places for early voting have been out the door. We've seen pictures and everything else, and I've had folks report back to me that they've already gone out and early voted, but they had to wait in line for like an hour, sometimes two, to get it all done. I mean, there is some verve and zest and zeal to get something going on. So if you haven't gone out and early voted, well, now could be the time. So go check it out this week. Going on early, you just never know. In Fairbanks, the city's been shut down for 2 days. Yesterday was a bad day as well. They've got power outages, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of stuff going on. So just imagine if that had been the election day. What if that big wicked snowstorm followed by all that sleeting rain and ice had happened on election day? So get out there and get your vote in early. Get it done. Vote, as we say on the program, vote early, vote often. That's what it's all about. All right, let me get into this ranked choice voting thing, because I do want to open up the phone lines here in the next segment and start taking some calls. And I can continue on if we don't get any calls, but I want to go over some of the problems with the ranked choice voting. The Great Brook Institute has got a couple of really good, these are really dry statistical analyses of the good, the opaque, and the end game of ranked choice voting. And it really gets down into the problem that I think a lot of people are going to have. Part of it has to do with the way ranked choice voting works. Do we all remember the hanging chads, right? We remember the hanging chads and how that became a whole thing, right? That was like a real. So anytime we change things up and we're trying to do things, it's frustrating. Now, I have had people actually already with early voting ask me how they're supposed to fill out the ballot. And, did they do it right? Because they're concerned. And one of them had actually filled it out incorrectly as far as, how placing the choices in one row instead of across the rows and everything. And for some, maybe it's not that hard. For others, maybe it's a little more confusing. You've got a question of, usability. As they try and design what's going on and trying to make it all work. Transparency is also a problem here as well. But some of the biggest issues come with, one, the disenfranchisement of folks who are, one, English as a second language, and two, the elderly who have been voting for years and now have to try and figure out a whole new voting system, who may not have voted in the last election cycle because it wasn't a presidential election cycle, and they are now they're now voting for maybe the first time. Maybe they only vote in presidential elections. And so there's a question there as well. But the biggest problem is that ranked choice voting consistently creates a problem where only two, for example, if a voter only ranks 2 of 5 candidates, and those 2 are eliminated in the first and second rounds of tabulation, their choices will not be considered in the remaining rounds of tabulation. This is the problem with ballot exhaustion. Hypothetically, a ranked choice voting is supposed to be instant runoff, right? Instant runoff. But what they're asking you to do is they're asking you to predict the outcome of the election and pretend that the runoff has instantly happened, and now they want you to choose a second, a third, a fourth choice. But you really don't know who's going to win the first round. And maybe your choice would change from round to round. Maybe if your preferred candidate wins the first round but doesn't get into, and maybe there's a second candidate or third candidate or fourth candidate that you'd rather have. You just, that's the problem. It's betting on a prediction of something that hasn't happened yet. That's part of the problem. A study published and the biggest question, the biggest problem to me is this is supposedly all about majority wins, right? But according to the Heritage Foundation, a study published in 2015 that received 600,000 votes cast using ranked choice voting in 4 local elections in Washington state and California found that, quote, the winner in all 4 elections, the person that won in each of those 4 elections, received less than the majority of the votes cast. It was a majority of the remaining votes, but due to ballot exhaustion, you had people that had no say in who was actually elected in the end. Now, the people who are pushing ranked choice voting say this is a feature, not a bug. They say this is working as intended because we want more moderate / fringe / less people on the verges of each side winning, because that makes us better, rather than the majority of people who said, I really want this going. And no, you can't have that. That's a little troubling. Another example is demonstrated by what happened in Australia, which uses ranked choice voting in their 2010 election. The Liberal Labour Party won the Australian House despite only having 38% of the first place votes on the initial ballot, while the second place Liberal National Coalition, which was a center-right choice, captured 43% of the first place votes. In other words, more voters wanted a center-right government than a left-wing government, but further iterations of ranked choice made sure that did not happen. You have the mayoral race in Oakland, California in 2010, in which the candidate received the most first-place votes lost the election to a candidate on the strength of nearly 25,000 second and third place votes after 9 rounds of redistribution of the votes. There's a problem with transparency as well, right? How do you collate and track when you've got 3 and 4 and 5 different, how do you collate and track all that? How do you show that it's all transparent and then one ballot is actually getting to the right end? And what happens when you don't vote beyond a second or a third candidate? Again, going back to ballot exhaustion. This happened in Maine. We talked to the people at Great Brook about this back when we interviewed Dr. Brown, I think is the guy's name. When we first started talking about this, when we had the folks from Great Brook on in 2018, the first ever general election for federal office in the nation that was decided by ranked choice voting in the 2nd Congressional District, the declared eventual winner was a Democrat, even though incumbent Bruce Poliquin, a Republican, received more votes than Golden in the first round. There were 2 additional candidates in the race. However, the Maine Secretary of State exhausted or threw out a total of 14,000 ballots who had not ranked all of the candidates. I mean, here's the problem. And this is kind of the bottom line when you come down to it. Not only is ranked choice voting too complicated, it disenfranchised voters because ballots that do not include the 2 ultimate finalists are cast aside to manufacture a faux majority for the winner. But it's only a majority of the voters remaining, not the majority of all the voters who actually cast their vote in elections. That's the problem. Again, going back to that California, the winner in all 4 elections received less than the majority of the total votes cast. This, again, if it has to be so complicated that you have to use a spreadsheet and a slide rule, and it takes you 30 days to do the vote count. 30 days to do the vote count. If that's part of the problem, we got some issues, right? If it can't be claimed and a winner can't be declared within 7 days, and it takes a full 30 days to figure it all out and slide rule it out, we've got a deeper problem. And for me, these are all the reasons why I think ranked choice voting needs to go. Now, ideologically, again, in a perfect world, ranked choice voting looks great on paper, but it's in the execution and it's in the real world choices that are going on that are creating this problem. The fact that you have 2 different types, 2 different philosophies of people, kind of the more communal type people, and then the people who are like lone wolfing it and are more ruggedly individual. and I think you can figure out which parties belong to which principle. And this plays deeply into that whole area of communalism. And look, the Democrats have been pushing for all this the whole time. They've loved this. They thought this was great. Not all Democrats. I think Mark Begich was one of the ones that was like, we don't need ranked choice voting, but the majority of Democrats now are all about it. And look at what happened when Eric Hafner ended up as one of the top 4. What did they do? Well, ranked choice voting is great. Wait, we got to go to court and sue to get this guy off the ballot. I thought it was great. I thought it was all about that. Anyway, it's a frustrating thing. And really the whole bottom line is that this is just way too complicated when it could have just been one person, one vote. One person, one vote. And if there was a too close to call, or if there wasn't a majority, you have a runoff, and then you know who the players are in that second round. See, that's the thing. They're asking you to bet on who's going to be the players in the third or the second or third or fourth or fifth round. That's the problem. But again, some great articles. Oh, thank you, Brian. There's some great articles on ranked choice voting over a great book, and the Heritage Institute as well has got another piece that talks specifically about the problems with ranked choice voting, and I will post those up in the chat room. We can take a look at it. But meanwhile, I want to open up the phone lines now that you've had a chance, and if you've early voted, you've had a chance to use it 3 times now, because we had the primary, the general, and now you can tell me. Well, actually, this would be the 4th time if we had for the other election. So primary. Yes. So this should be the 4th time if you voted already. What are your thoughts? But, are you all A-okay with it? And it's fine. I mean, a lot of my libertarian friends are very excited about ranked choice voting. I particularly am not. They're excited about ranked choice voting because it gets them on the ballot and they get a chance to actually have a say on something, which I understand. But it's not a good look, again, in the end. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Sorry. I got a little long-winded there. I see we got one line on hold. Okay, so we got one line on hold. We'll be to them here in just a second. Hold the line, caller there. I haven't even given the phone number. People are already calling in. Did you guys see Mike Cronk's new video? His new video is quite brilliant. I'll be honest with you. It is quite brilliant. Mike Kronk for state senate. He goes on to tell you, he says, every politician likes to tell you what they've done, but let me tell you what I haven't done. I didn't spearhead the largest property tax increase in Fairbanks history. I didn't get a law degree so I could shut down resource development. I didn't raid public school funding to build a new Puppy Palace animal shelter. I'm not saying that any candidate in this race did any of those things, but if there was one who did, it definitely wasn't me. Okay, I got it. I mean, it's a brilliant ad. It is hysterical. You should go out and check it out. I guess I'll, let's see. Can I post this? I guess I'll post this. We'll see if this actually works in Facebook, but you can go watch it. It is hysterical. Brian says, I've gotten questions about ranked choice from friends in Colorado, which have the issue on the ballot. It's being sold as Alaska loves ranked choice voting. Of course, that was the whole point. The whole point is that they wanted to get somebody on board, and then they could say, look, they love it. You should too. Even though it's not true. Snowing sideways this morning in Salcha. Good morning, Mike. Barbara said she literally crossed a flooded out 7th Avenue to vote. The weather in Fairbanks has been crazy, absolutely crazy. The McDonaldization of the electorate. Did you see that right after Trump did that whole thing where he gave, he was at the window, he did the campaign thing at McDonald's where he served French fries or whatever and everything else, that like the next day the CDC came out with an emergency report of quarter pounders will kill you now because there's some kind of emergency outbreak. If it's the coincidence, it's the most fortuitous coincidence in the world. McDonald gets all this press about President Trump, and then the next day they're like, "Oh, these burgers will kill you. E. coli. We got to stop it. We don't know what's going on, but we'll figure it out." I was just like, wow. Donna Arduin says our ranked choice also leads to candidates being dishonest about their true values and principles if they possess them. See Peltola. Yeah, exactly. She's running as if she's a moderate, and in the long run, she is, Nancy's girl. She's voting with Nancy. She's hanging out with the crew, right? Or the squad. What do they call them? The crew, the squad, the gaggle. Yeah. The ranked choice voting is a disaster. I haven't seen this one. The FGA.org. Ranked choice voting is a disaster. I'll have to take a look at that. But yeah, it is a disaster. And it's problematic, and we need to get rid of it. We need to go back. We need to go back to it. Oh, and Barbara's talking. Well, I think Barbara sent me the ad to begin with. Okay. One person, one vote in the rank primary. 4 winners in the general. In the general, you vote 4 times and one person wins. How ridiculous, says Tucker. Okay. Koreans in Russia. North Koreans? All right. What about that Hajdukovic tax? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. No on 1, yes on 2, says Barbara. Yep, I'm down with that. No on 1, yes on 2. Okay, we still have our first caller up on the line. If you guys have something you'd like to say, the rest of the state's listening. If you've got thoughts on ranked choice voting, I'd love for you to call 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. Let's get it going on. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yep. We're continuing on. Phone lines are now open. Operators are standing by. No, just me. I'm just standing by. What are your thoughts on this ranked choice voting? We've been talking about it in the chat room. Couple great, brilliant, I think Donna hit it on the head. Ranked choice voting also leads to candidates being dishonest about their true values and principles if they possess them. See Peltola. Again, that's right. Mary Peltola is running like she's a moderate. All the language that you see is she's a moderate. When you can look at her voting record and see she's nothing like, she's not a moderate. Her vote has been very liberal. But again, this should be no surprise to us because Murkowski's been doing this for years. She says she's a moderate Republican, but really, is she really? Is she really more just like a Democrat which is it? I'm just asking for a friend. All right, number to call. If you want to call in and talk about what you think about ranked choice voting, keep it clean. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Love to hear what you have to say on this topic. What are your thoughts? Where are you going? Let's go over to the phones right now. We've had a line on hold since right before we went to break. Let's get to it right now and see what's going on. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
My name is Wyatt, and I live in Anchorage, Alaska.
Hello, sir. What's on your mind?
I wanted to basically discuss about the issue of ranked choice voting, and I basically I could make a good comparison for good old-fashioned traditional voting is by voting for either for a can of Coca-Cola or a can of Pepsi.
Okay.
Yeah, but with ranked choice voting, you just basically have too much choices.
I don't know if you have too many choices. I just think if you had let's say you had, Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper and Mr. Pibb and Fresca or something up there, you still get a choice of, if you're doing just a one and done, you still get a choice to pick your favorite candidate. And if your favorite candidate doesn't win, or if your favorite candidate doesn't get the majority of votes and they have to have a runoff, then at least you get to choose knowing who has lost so far, right? I mean, at least then you would know who the next who is going to be the next slate of candidates that will be available in that second round. What I really dislike about ranked choice voting is they're making you try to predict the future, like which one's going to lose, which one's going to win. I may change my vote on my second or third choice or my fourth choice if I know who's been eliminated so far and who's actually going to be in the final running.
Yeah, that is very true. Because what's that area can say using ever since our state implemented ranked choice voting, you basically have to choose only one in the primary of who's going to make it to the top four.
Right. Well, you're right. I mean, you get the one and done, which is what we were doing before, only we were doing it inside of a party instead of choosing them at large. That's the other component of this. And that's what they've been pushing back about, is the fact that they don't want it to go back to party primaries, because then the parties could choose amongst themselves the best candidates and keep some of the fringe candidates. I mean, I don't think Eric Hafner would have made it to the ballot, to the main ballot, if he had tried to primary himself with the party. Do you?
Yes, I do agree with it. I think it would have just been in old-fashioned traditional, not old primary, but voting, is that they would have just selected the nominee that they could have had and not had another different candidate of split the vote.
Right. I agree with that. So again, just to clarify, you're not in favor of ranked choice voting, and you'd like to see it repealed. Is that my take on this?
Yes, that is correct, because I despised it, because as the group called No Owa on to they just basically bait me. He felt disgusted, because they just kept on having number of flooding and junk mail come into my mailbox.
I will say that I actually checked the mail. I don't normally check the mail in my house. Usually one of my kids does it, but I was there yesterday, and so I stopped by and I picked up the mail, and my mailbox was literally half full of flyers, and it was all no on to Peltola packs, everything. I think I had one flyer in there from the candidate for the candidate for my district, but the rest of it was all just vote no on two, junk mail from the vote yes on one, and all the Peltola packs and everything else. I mean, it's irritating. And even the guy who was next to me, as I was throwing them all away, was shaking his head. And I was like, what do you think? They killed a whole forest? He goes, it's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, at this point, if you haven't made your decision at this point, we are 10 days away, 12 days away from the election. If you haven't made your decision at this point, why are you filling my mailbox with junk at this point? That's the question.
Yeah, because as of when many years ago, when I heard that they were going to be implementing ranked choice voting, I instantly opposed it and voted against it. But our state, it was duped into voting for, or it's under the false promise that it would stop dark money from coming into Alaska. But
Right.
we're still having dark money come into our state.
Right, exactly. There's some irony for you, right? It's all about the dark money. That's what they were trying to get us to stop. And the next thing you know, you get all these things that are funded by the 1630 group and the Amendment 4 and all the other, outside United America PAC and everything. And they're, pouring millions of dollars into the state to try and convince us this is a great thing. Well, anyway, Linus, I appreciate you calling in. Thank you for sounding off this morning and being part of the show.
Oh, well, there's one slogan I have about Halloween against no one too.
Okay.
yeah, it's that the No 1 2 people are trying to trick Alaska, and that they are just treating themselves with loads of money.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I was just saying. I mean, that's the problem, is that they're trying to use all this outside money to convince Alaskans that the system that we have, that we should love it. Not how we feel, not how we think, those that have participated and voted and used it. All this outside money is out there because they're desperate to keep it in Alaska, because as Brian was just saying in the chat room earlier, he has friends from Colorado asking him questions about ranked choice voting because it's on the ballot down in Colorado, and the people down there are saying Alaskans love ranked choice voting. And that's not the case. There's a vote up to repeal it. So they're desperate to keep it on the on the books. And that is definitely part of the problem, all that outside money. All right, Linus, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us this morning. That leaves all the lines open. If you'd like to sound off, I'd love to hear from you and talk. If you've got friends like Brian, I'm surprised Brian has friends, but I mean, if you have friends like Brian who have been receiving calls from other people, because ranked choice voting, again, they're trying to push it across the nation. And they have been holding Alaska up as an example of it for the last 4 years, ever since it passed, even before it was actually implemented. When it passed in 2020, the next thing they said was, well, Alaska's done it. You should do it too. It's great. It's fantastic. It'll do well. And no, it won't. But that's what they want to do. They want to hold it up and use it as an example of what everybody else should be doing. And again, they're always trying to deceive and inveigle you. In the first vote, remember, it was about ranked choice voting, but it was mostly about
Dark money. Right?
That's what it was all about. Now it's about keeping our primaries open. Right? That's the new thing. Oh, political elites are trying to close the primaries. That's the problem. Let's go over here. Diane is on the line, and let's see what she has to say. Good morning, Diane. What's on your mind?
Good morning. This is actually Jim from Anchorage.
Oh, hello, Jim from Anchorage. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, you guys have been talking about it already, this ranked choice voting, and you're absolutely right. When they started to get it to pass, they did the dark money. And they focused on that and spent millions and millions of dollars focusing on dark money. So now, when they have to face it again, they focus on how well the ranked choice works, and everybody loves it. And they do that so that they can, like you were just saying, move it down to the states. They started here. Because we're a cheap date up in Alaska. But if you look at any of the Democrat voting issues, if you see anything from out of state with millions of dollars from any of these out of state PACs, basically it's Democrat, and you should just basically vote no.
Well, I mean,
that's what I look at it.
Yeah, well, Jim, it doesn't even have to be Democrat. It's just, if I see a bunch of out-of-state money going into something, trying to convince Alaskans that they need to do something, I'm kind of fundamentally against it begin with, because look, I'm third generation, right? I mean, from my generation and forward, it was always the old phrase of, we don't give a damn how they do it outside. So all this outside money and all these people from the lower 48 telling us how to vote, how to do it, no, I'm sorry. You can't tell me what to do. You're not my boss. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Look what happens with the population. We've been going bluer, we went from red to purple to where now we're pretty much blue, especially in Anchorage. I grew up here too since '69, and it's just horrible. So I unfortunately don't have a computer. So the last 20 years, I get all my information off the radio or just talking to other people. But I spend a lot of time there, so learned a lot in the last 20 years. And I get really upset. Well, not upset, but I get sad when I hear people say why. And people have got to understand that these Democrats, I don't call them Democrats anymore, they're not stupid, the ones on top. This is all, they figure out. It's just like it with the Democrats. It started with ID.
Right.
Whose idea is it to be to not use ID?
Right. Well, it's because it's too hard. And that's the same thing they're going on about right now on this whole signature on the ballot thing. They're treating them like, what? You can't figure out how to get a signature on a ballot? You can't figure out how to get an ID? I saw a really interesting man on the street interview here recently with a bunch of folks in an inner city, and they were mostly minorities. And they were saying, the interviewer was asking him, if you had to show an ID to vote, is that a hardship? Is that a problem? They're all like, no, we have to have ID for all this other stuff. Why would it be a problem? I don't understand. Are you saying we're not smart enough to be able to get an ID? I mean, that's what it all comes down to. Absolutely. Jim, I appreciate your call, but I got to go here. Thank you for calling in and joining us. That makes all four lines open right now. 319-527-3864. What do you think? I mean, and especially if you're one of those demographics that has a hard time reading, or maybe English is a second language, or you're the elderly, those are the ones that Great Brook and others have said have been the most disenfranchised by ranked choice voting. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I want to know. And if you're in favor of ranked choice voting, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me why, and let's talk about this other stuff as well. 319-527-3864, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Let me go here. Let me go up here. Weird that my comments are getting grayed out. Why would your comments again, I'm not looking at it in Facebook. I'm looking at it in StreamYard. And so, I don't know why your comments would be getting grayed out, Brian. Let me take a look. Let me take a look at what's going on right now, and see if I can. I don't want to. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to start echoing. I'm sure. Except I muted the tab. Aha! See, he can be taught. He can be taught. I don't see any. I don't see any of your comments being hidden. Facebook sometimes does weird stuff. Like sometimes it'll auto hide. It'll auto hide comments like automatically. Like I didn't do anything. Like it just decided to do it on its own. And I don't know if it was because you said something that goes against the community stuff or whatever. I don't know. I'm just scrolling through it real quick here to see if there's anything that sticks out at me. Nope, I don't see anything. All right, Brian. Well, hopefully that's fixed. You do have the power to fix it, so feel free to do so if that's what you need to do. Okay, let me go back. I did see a Richie says, I get tired of having to dig through all that garbage to get to my bills and important mail. I don't need a shiny flyer to tell me how evil and bad candidates are. The past 3.5 years have shown me who the idiots are and caused this dumpster fire. No flyer necessary. I love that. I really love that. Bradley says he really likes the fact that all candidates are on one ballot. I was really frustrated with the old system and how you could only get a Republican or a Democrat ballot. But that was just for the primary, Bradley. That wasn't for the general election. That's just for the primary, right? I mean, you could do it. in the general election, you could vote for any candidate you wanted. There was not separate ballots. There was only one ballot. But in the primary, the parties were trying to decide who to put up on their deal, right? Whoa, dang! I actually like that. Kevin just sent me a meme that I'm gonna have to put that up in my. Let me see here. Can I do this right here? Yeah, I'll do this right here. RCV SWJPG. Okay. I'll actually see if I can put this up in the picture. Let me put this in the picture here because this is a great picture meme. I have way too many pictures in my deal here. All right, here's the picture. This is ranked choice voting in a nutshell. This is fantastic. Two candidates equals fair fights. Majority wins. The more candidates on your side, the more unfair the election. And for those of you who are on the radio or listening on the podcast, two candidates equals fair fight is Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader. Luke wins 60-40. And then on the majority loses side, where the more candidates are on your side, the more unfair the election. It's Yoda and Luke and Leia and Han and Chewbacca, all against Darth Vader, who only gets 31% of the vote, but he still wins because that's how it works. The more people who are on your side, the less fair the election, the more unfair the election. That's a great meme there. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that with us. Okay. Richie says all ranked choice voting has done is confuse people, which inevitably led to people getting frustrated and not participating and making it easier for individuals to manipulate the process. And I would agree. I have talked to people who are like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it anymore. They're just like, I'm done. That's it. That's it for them. It's interesting how for all these years we had an election day, we all went to vote, and by that night we knew who the next president was. All of this is ridiculous. COVID is long over. Cut the excuses and BS and go back to one person, one vote. Yeah. I mean, again, that's part of the problem. If it takes 30 days for you to figure it out with a slide rule and a spreadsheet and a supercomputer, then it's probably a little more complicated than it needed to be. You know? All right. Keep it clean. Yeah. Bill's like, well, that just ruined it for me to call in. I mean, you could call in and still, you can just pretend you're around a bunch of little children, Bill. Even you, I know, doesn't let loose around all the little children. That is, you know. Okay. It's good to know that the Michael Duke Show is reaching into the People's Republic of Anchorage. Yeah, we are getting in there. Even though it's not on the terrestrial airwaves, we are getting in there. It's pretty interesting. All right, we're coming now. Yeah, just say no to out-of-state dough. Yeah, there you go. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's continue on. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, welcome back. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. We did have one comment. I've got, I see Randy's on the line. We're going to be to him in just a second. I did get one comment from earlier, and I'm sorry, it was from Bradley. Bradley said, I really like the fact that all candidates are on one ballot. I was really frustrated with the old system and how you could only get a Republican or a Democratic ballot. Well, that's only during the primary. You could only get the ballot. Well, and in fact, it was only if you were a registered Republican, to get the Republican ballot, you either had to be a registered Republican or undeclared independent, right? Undeclared voter. I could always have access to the Republican ballot because I've never registered with a legitimate political party. And they did that. The reason why they closed their primary is because, again, the Democrats got really good about they would only put up one candidate, so they didn't need to vote on that part of the ticket for their ballot because they already had their one good candidate. They're so good at kumbayaing and not putting multiple candidates up for the same office because they have like a discipline of saying, hey, look, let's not put 5 candidates up. Let's just put the one up. And so then they'd go vote in the Republican primary for the weakest candidate or the one that was the fringiest or whatever. And so the Republicans actually, that's when they closed their primaries to registered Democrats. That's all they did. They only closed it to registered Democrats. Now, you could still choose in the primary which ballot you wanted, but in the general, you didn't choose. There was one ballot. So Bradley's right. In the old system, you could only get a Republican or a Democratic ballot. But again, that's for the primaries. The primaries were for the parties to decide who they wanted to have in the main event. Shouldn't that be their right? I think the Democrats should have their right to decide who they want to put up in the main event. I think that should be their choice. I think the Republicans should be there as well. I mean, these are essentially clubs. Don't you want to know who's going to represent you in your club? Would you want somebody from a rival club to come in and be able to vote who's going to be running on your behalf? No, that doesn't make any sense. So, Bradley, I understand what you're saying, but that, again, that was just for the primary. In the general, you can vote for whoever you want. All right, we got to go back to the phones. Randy's on the line. Let's go see what his thoughts are as we get started this morning. Good morning, Randy. What are your thoughts?
Hi there, Michael. Yeah, I sure do hope that everybody votes yes. We want to get rid of ranked choice voting on ballot measure number 2. And of course, you've talked a lot about Eric Hafner, but I just want to mention it again, that's a perfect example of how there's a tremendous flaw in the ranked choice open jungle primary election system. The fact that everyone in the state, or just, all us voters, you, I'm sure, as well as me, in the mail, we got the State of Alaska official election pamphlet, a very important booklet to have. And they, of course, have 4 pages devoted to the 4 finalists for the U.S. House of Representatives, including the Mary Peltola, who is the incumbent,
right,
and Nick Begich, who is the chief primary. But they have 4 of them, and one of the 4, each one of them 4 gets a full page write-up with their photo and everything. And, of course, one of the 4 is Eric Hafner. And, of course, we know that Eric Hafner, who's listed here, I've got this booklet opened up to me right now, is listed as a registered Democrat. But these final 4, let's see, it's very important having these final 4. So, but it's a ridiculous situation. But anyway, we know that Eric Hafner has never stepped foot in Alaska, and he's currently serving in prison in New York. So it's an absurd and ridiculous situation that he has this full page write-up. And we ask, well, how in the world did this happen? And of course, the reason it happened is because of our ranked choice open jungle primary system allowed this to happen.
Right,
but one thing I wanted to point out that maybe hadn't been talked about too much is that, well, what about our previous traditional election system that we had prior to 2020? Could he have gotten onto the general ballot? Well, there is a provision for a guy like Eric Hafner to be a no-party candidate in the general election ballot. But there's a filtration process. And that filtration process in the previous system is that you had to gather signatures on a petition to get onto the general ballot and to bypass the primary. But that requires that you get an amount of signatures that is equal to 1% of all the voters that voted in the previous election. And of course, having never stepped in Alaska and being serving time in prison, he never would have been able to gather all those signatures. That's a lot of signatures. You got to go all over the place to get those signatures. So that is a filtration process that was in the previous traditional system that all the other states have, by the way.
Right.
And then the other filtration process is the party primary. But both of those filtration processes that we had in the previous election system have been destroyed by the present election system that we have. What's happened, as you know, of course, and as you've talked about a lot, is millions of dollars came into Alaska to experiment on Alaska and created a Frankenstein monster, and that's what we're stuck with right now. Hope we can get rid of it.
No, I agree, Randy. I agree totally. And you're right. He would not have been on the ballot. And you know, it was ironic that they're like, oh, ranked choice voting is so great, until somebody on their side of the ticket was on the ballot that could take votes away from their people. That was definitely part of the problem. Thank you, Randy. Barbara's on the line. Barbara, I got about 2.5 minutes here. What's on your mind?
Good morning. This is Barbara. Just thought I'd call in my personal opinion here. No, I guess one thing that people have to be aware of, I'm very much a yes on two person, but there's also another ballot proposition, and that's Proposition 1. That's why there's two. Proposition 1 is really, really awful, and I hope people vote it down. The minimum wage issue aside, there are restrictions on political and religious speech of employers. And that is just really an egregious thing. I think it violates the First Amendment. But beyond that, what it does is it silences Alaskan business owners, and it makes all of us kind of hostage to this dark money, external NGOs that come in and just
Absolutely.
Kind of campaign away anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a real problem because, again, and what I think it is it's a way to get backdoor unionization into small businesses, because the owner would not be allowed to really hold a meeting and speak out against why he thinks that his place shouldn't be unionized, because that would essentially be political speech. It's the Trojan horse. It's the poison pill inside that.
Or some environmental group comes in and they're like, say they're against mining tin or mining, I don't know, whatever the industry is. They can come in and with a ballot measure and just pound the heck out of our airways, and that private employer is unable to respond because of no one won. So it's not just a way of, it really what it does is it amplifies the dark money. It's actually anti everything that I think we passed Proposition 2 about originally, was to get rid of dark money. What no one won, if you vote yes on one, you're actually amplifying dark money. So vote no on one.
Yep.
Tell the dark money, go home.
Yep. It's no on one and yes on two. Barbara, thank you for calling in this morning. I appreciate it. We did a dissection on this earlier or late last week. You can go back and watch that. Out of time for hour one. Hour two is dead ahead. Ben Carpenter, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole thing. You can go back when Katie Capozzi was on with us late last week. When was Katie Capozzi on? Katie Capozzi was last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday. So if you didn't see that and you want to dive down into the details on what number one could do, ballot measure number one could do, go back to the podcast and listen to last Wednesday. Hold on a second here. Sorry, I'm doing things. I cannot type this morning. All right. Let me see here. Let me grab this. Ben's having a hard time here with the link I sent him. Let me resend it to another location. Here we go. All right. Let me send him another text. All right. Okay. All right. There you go. All right. Let me go back here and see what else you guys have been talking about. I see my name being used in vain. Donna Bryan is plagiarizing you again. I want to vote for the person, not the party, said Frank. Well, you're allowed to vote for the person, not the party, in the main general election. If you want to vote in a party primary, then join the party. That seems pretty simple. I mean, you're a trapper. Would you want the Northern Environmental Center to be able to vote on how a trappers guild or a group of trappers, held their meetings? Would you want them to be able to vote in your party? No? Okay. Well, then that's exactly what it's like. I want to vote for the person, not the party as well. But again, that's why I'm undeclared. I could take any ballot I want under the old system. I could take any ballot I want. If I figured that, I wanted to have sway in a certain race, I could do it. Okay. I use my Blockbuster card, says Bill. You still have your Blockbuster card? Man, you should frame that thing. I mean, come on. I'm going through here. The only people who could not vote, if I remember correctly, the only people who could not vote in the R primary were those that were registered D. Yes, that's right. That's what I was just saying earlier. 7 a.m. notification, says Jerica. Facebook really doesn't like me joining at 6. Well, sign up on YouTube and get those notifications, or just set your alarm. Facebook, Facebook is not a reliable alarm. I just got to say that right now. Okay. Like your vote, and then get 10 more people to vote. Yeah. Thank you, Randy's peeps asking, does yes mean no on 2? Yeah. I mean, a vote on 2. If you vote yes on 2, we'll revert back to the old voting system. Yes on 2 means we go back to the old system. Yes on 2. No on 1, yes on 2. Jack says, I've already voted and I still have to empty out my mailbox every other day. It's insane. I mean, literally, I had 20 mailers in my box. 20 mailers. My box was full. I had to ask the guy to go back and make sure nothing got knocked on the floor. It was so full of junk. During the break, play the Kronk ad. You guys can't hear the audio anyway for the system that I have set up right now, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay. Imagine if every decision you made in life and business had to go through a ranked choice voting process. Yeah. Kevin says your discussion on clubs has always been exactly right. The jungle primary has always been the larger problem. Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that the jungle primary is the larger problem because it shapes who ends up in the final 4 for the ranked choice voting. But I think the ranked choice voting is still, it's a huge problem when you've got basically, especially when you have to do multiple rounds and you realize that the person who won didn't get the majority of the overall cast votes. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Anyway. That's what it's all about. I see Mr. Carpenter is with us here. Let's double check this here and see how things are going. Hey Ben, how you doing?
Good morning, Michael. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you good. All right,
well, let's try this internet thing. It's yesterday my internet was not doing very good. Probably
okay
due to the wind or something. So
well, we can revert back to the phones if we have to, but let's fingers crossed. Video's always more interesting, so let's try that this morning. So you ready? You're in the final stretch. You all ready to do this?
Yeah, we're good. We're ready to have it done with.
Okay, good. All right, well, hold the line here. I'll be right back to you. Representative Ben Carpenter, our guest, just drinking coffee and eating my virtual donuts, hanging out there in the thing. Let's see. David says, Donna, maybe we should require legislators to use ranked choice voting on the floor votes and committee votes. Let's make it even more complicated, shall we? I think that's a good idea. All right, we're going to go. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's go. Here we do.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning. Welcome to the program. It is hour one of the big radio show, or hour two of the big radio show. I mean, the first hour was so fast, I still think it's hour one. And quick housekeeping moment before we get joined by our guest here. Representative Ben Carpenter is in the green room hanging out, waiting for us here. We're about to jump into it with him to talk about his run for Senate. But quick housekeeping, if you're just joining us, coming into hour two, I will not be on the air Friday or Monday. Friday or Monday. I have a thing, and I just did not want to be pressed for time and have to haul around remote gear and do everything. So anyway, I'm saying, so I apologize, but I will not be on the air Friday or Monday. We'll be returning to the airwaves Tuesday, the 29th. But tomorrow will be the final day of broadcast for this week. For me, you will have alternate programming in other parts of the state. Wherever you're listening, they will have somebody. They can't have dead air for 2 hours, so they'll have somebody else on there. I'm sure Michael Gallagher will be on in the Peninsula, and probably, America Today or something up in the interior. So anyway, alternate programming, we will be back. All right. Monday and Friday, we will be off the air. All right. That brings us over to our guest for this hour, currently representing the Peninsula down there in the State House, now moving and shaking and heading on over to the Senate. Representative Ben Carpenter joins us this morning to discuss his candidacy and all the latest and greatest and things that are happening right now. Ben, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing very well.
Well, thanks for coming on board. Yeah, thank you for coming on board. Ben, lots of stuff happening in this last couple weeks here. We're down to the last 10, 12 days. This is the home stretch. And you just got a really big, I think, feather in your cap. Bob Byrd put out an article in Must Read Alaska endorsing you and talking about his disappointment with your opponent, who he has intimate knowledge of, and all the reasons why he thinks you're the better choice. That must come as that must be a nice little boost there in the end here.
I think it is. Yeah, I have fond feelings for Bob Byrd. He was my high school history teacher, government teacher, and my favorite classes were the ones that he taught, and really looked up to him. And he's really helped shape my understanding of constitutional principles in our government. And I'm excited to have him endorsing me for this race.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an exciting thing. And again, he even brought out some things that I wasn't aware of, some of his disappointments again in your opponent. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. It was good to kind of get some background and some understanding of where things are coming. How is the race going overall? Because I know this has been kind of a contentious race. I mean, this is what I like to call Republican on Republican violence, right? I mean, this is, you guys are fighting it out and duking it out, and it's got, I mean, you're taking the high road, but it's gotten a little nasty out there.
Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, the problem that we've had in the 6 years that I've been in the legislature has been a Republican problem. Whether it's in the House or the Senate, it is Republicans that have got some issues here. And it's not, what does it mean to be a Republican? Just because someone has an R behind their name doesn't mean that they actually believe in Republican principles or or have character that the Republicans would expect them to live up to, right? So people elect a Republican and they go down to the Senate and work with the Democrats. That isn't Republican. So what the heck are we doing here? More and more as I see the end of this election coming, the word that keeps coming up in my mind is deception. And we cannot allow ourselves as voters and as Americans, as Alaskans, to allow our election process to be defined by deception. We have got to engage with the candidates and understand exactly what it is that they're saying. If you listen to my opponent, he's saying things about me like, I want to close schools or increase your gas and electric bills or close prisons. I voted for an income tax. I just want to raise your property taxes. I mean, these are crazy things, right? They have no factual,
no basis in reality.
No basis in reality. No, they're not. And honestly, what it's doing is it's showing a disdain for the voter, because most voters are busy. They're living their lives. They don't participate in politics in a real consistent fashion, and they have a trusting nature. And what all these lies, all this misleading and deception that's being presented out there is really self-serving. And people need to understand that just because they have an R behind their name doesn't mean that they're beyond the capability of playing dirty like that. So a Republican that takes credit for cutting taxes, right? He's famous for that now, right? I cut taxes. No, you didn't cut taxes. You shifted who pays taxes.
Right.
You created a bill that gave tax exemptions to farm structures for property tax owners. And that means those property tax payers that have a reduction because of their exemption, that burden is shifted over to other taxpayers who don't have farm structures. So you didn't cut taxes. You just shifted who pays them. So this is a deception, right?
Right.
Vote for me because I cut taxes. Well, no. If you would say, vote for me, I shifted taxes away from the farmer to the other non-farmer taxpayer, then it sounds entirely different. That might be a good thing to do. I don't know, but
it would be true in one way. At least it would be true, right?
That's exactly it. At least we would be talking about policy instead of just some fancy slogan that makes people feel good, right?
Ben, if somebody said to me, describe Ben Carpenter to me, I would say, well, he's cool, he's collected, he's a mild-mannered guy. You're fired up today. I mean, this must be really, getting to the point to where, and I don't hear the ads that are on the Peninsula, but I've heard from people that they're getting sick of a lot of the same thing, hearing these lies. It must be, it sounds like you're at wit's end with all basically the lies, the deception, the misinformation. I hate to use that word, but really the outright fabrications of what's coming out of your opponent at this point.
Yeah, I have talked to quite a few people that see the ads coming across, whether it's for ranked choice voting, vote no on 2, right? They see the messages that are coming across, and they're created so believably, but they're deception. And it's hard for people who aren't engaged in politics all the time to see that sometimes. Getting rid of ranked choice voting and increasing the participation of people in our political process is exactly what we need to do. The whole reason that we ended up with ranked choice voting is because people were dissatisfied with the quality of candidates and the quality that's coming out of our political parties. But we replaced, and if you listen to the narrative on the pro ranked choice voting people, it's a anti-party message. The parties are the ones that are failing us. The party is the evil thing, right?
Right. Well, it's the political elites in the parties who are trying to take your vote away from you.
Yeah. So all of these outside interests, these outside organizations who are spending money in the state of Alaska for political purposes to get people elected and to get ballot measure 1, get it passed in the state. That's what political parties would do, right? They're just doing better at achieving political results through a different structure than a political party. So we've seen a shift away from your traditional political party power towards this, what we classically call now dark money organizations from out of state. And there's no accountability in the state of Alaska for that political push. Who represents those organizations? I have no idea.
Right. All you have to do is look at any ad campaign, any ad that plays. All you have to do is listen for or look for the disclaimer at the end that says, who are the top 3 contributors? And almost every one of these, it's some outside group, 1630 Fund, Final Five, Amendment 4, the United America PAC. I mean, whoever it is, and it's all outside money. Almost, I mean, even the No on 2 campaign headed by Liesl McGuire. She's a Republican. It must be okay. All that money, the top 3 contributors are these huge outside organizations that all have ties back to Arabella and United America and Final Five and all these other things, which are all progressive groups wanting to push ranked choice voting on everybody in the country.
Yeah. Thatcher and Reagan fought communism during the Cold War outside of our country. We're still fighting communism now. We call it different things like Marxism and progressivism, but it's now within our own country. Like it's major. It's not just the fringe, it's major. And people need to stop and realize that the candidates that are being supported by organizations with agendas, like the Public Education Union in this state,
right,
who's dumped a gob of money to support their member, right? My opponent is a member of the Education Union, and they want to keep their member on the Senate, sitting in a Senate seat. So they can send their lobbyists down there, and they've already got a senator that's lobbying on the inside for them. That's
right.
Why they're spending gobs of money and lying, flat out lying about my record.
It's got to be frustrating. I mean, I've run for office and I've had some people lie about me, but it was a way that made me laugh. But if it was like everything that it said that was completely antithetical to what I was doing, I would be just as frustrated as you are. And it is frustrating to watch because, again, there's no way to clap back. You can do public forums, you can do shows like this, you can do a few things, but unless people, and like you said, a lot of this stuff is believable. A lot of this stuff is very believable when they put this, the No on 2 campaigns, they look at it and you go, oh, well, that makes sense. Oh, that, even though it's fallacious. I mean, it's false what they're saying. They put a grain of truth inside this whole whopper of a lie. And they're like, well, though that was true. Well, I mean, we may have surrounded it with other stuff, but that was true, and it's just marketing. It's frustrating. Or it's marketing. And it really is. I mean, it's some brilliant campaigning stuff, but it's deceptive and it's malicious, and I hate to see it. I mean, I really, really hate to see it, and we're seeing it in a lot of these races where you must be over the target, Ben, when you're taking flack. You're over the target. So obviously, you're striking some chords there and making people feel it. But I also want to talk a little bit about the party affiliation. You mentioned it earlier, just because you have an R next to your name. I want to talk about some of the problems with that and how I think that in a way we need to change that. And we'll continue that here in just a minute with Ben Carpenter, our guest candidate for state Senate in District D. We're going to return with more here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Ben Carpenter is our guest. Ben, do you have a website? You have a website for your stuff?
Campaign website is bencarpenterforalaska.com.
Okay. Or Alaska.com. Okay. I'm just fixing because we had you doubled up there on the little bug there, the little widget bug. for your name. Okay. No, I mean, Ben, and like I said, if somebody asked me to describe you, I would have thought mild-mannered, cool, collected, but you're agitated this morning. I could tell. I mean, this is, and I'm glad you're letting that little bit of that frustration show, because it shows people, how wrong it is. I mean, why would people, this is part of the problem with the process that we have right now. Why would people want to run for office if their opponent can just blithely lie about everything that they're doing?
It's exactly
right. Call
right.
into question their character, call it, all their actions. Why would you want to put yourself through that?
Why do we allow the National Education Association access to our children when they are capable of doing this to me? They are capable of doing it to you or any other person that runs for office. And what are they doing with our children? We've got some serious issues with the people who we've got empowered in our school systems. And that's where this negativity is coming from. Why do I recognize it? Because it's happened every time down here on the Kenai when I run for office. I always get the left-leaning teachers down here up in arms, and they are it's not all teachers, but it's the left-leaning teachers that are the most negative and nasty during these election processes. And you're exactly right. Why would anybody put their hat in the ring and say, "Hear me, I'm gonna take.
I want to serve, right? I want to serve.
Yeah.
Right? I want to serve my community.
It's
I want to
bullying.
do what's best. Right.
It's bullying. It is.
Yeah.
It is adult bullying.
Yeah. No, it's astonishing that this kind of stuff goes on, and I'm surprised as many people do run for office with everything that's going on, because I've been covering this stuff for 25 years, and I know people are like, well, nostalgia, hindsight, and everything else, but I don't remember it ever being quite as vicious as it is right now. I mean, really, I mean, there have been some negative campaigns in the past, but I don't remember it being quite like as prevalent as it is right now.
You might as well try to make an argument that I'm from Mars. Like the things that they're coming out, like that I wanted to close Wildwood Prison, are just complete nonsense. Like they're I don't know. I guess maybe it's just proof that they don't have much else, right? They're just grasping at straws for anything that's going to stick on the wall and make it negative. And I just have to trust in the electorate that they're going to see through it. And if they're not, well, then they get exactly what they wanted.
Statistics do show and have shown over the years that negative campaigns do have backlash. Right. They do have, if one candidate remains positive and one continues to go more and more negative, that does have a significant backlash. Is it enough to turn the election? I don't know, but you would hope so. And it's just like this all these outside campaigning groups. I would hope that most Alaskans are independently rugged enough to look at that and go, who are these people that are paying all these monies for these ads that I'm seeing every 5 minutes or hearing every 5 minutes? Who are these people? And who is the Arabella Fund? And who is the 1630 Fund? And who is the, Amendment 4 group? And who, why would they spend all this money? They must be spending a ton of money. They're spending $12 million for the No on 2 thing. And I'm sure all the PACs for the different candidates are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for these races. So I'm hoping along with you that the electorate is smart enough, even though they may not be engaged, they may subliminally be picking up on that and going, wow, that doesn't seem right. That just doesn't seem right. Where are the local people supporting this kind of stuff? For sure. I saw somebody said that 97.5 in Fairbanks is off the air for the last 2 days. The snowstorm and everything else has knocked a lot of power off in Fairbanks. There are 2 tower sites that are still without power in Fairbanks. The AMs are on, but the FMs are off. And yes, Channel 11's been off for a while as well. It's been a lot of problems in Fairbanks right now.
I'm glad you need to keep AM radio in your car.
Exactly. That's why AM radio is important. All right. Ben Carpenter's our guest. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do it.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yeah, a little bit of pain in the something or other. That's my job. That's what they pay me for. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show. Our guest today, Ben Carpenter. representative right now, but running for state Senate in District D down on the Peninsula. Ben, I was talking about earlier that I lovingly call this kind of stuff Republican on Republican violence when two people are duking it out. But at the same time, it's pretty easy if you look at voting records, if you look at, statements and how people have done things, you can see a difference in between there. And like you said, some people just put the R next to their name. And we've seen this in other contexts, right? We've seen Democrats go independent, quote unquote, to try and assuage more moderate voters that they're not really as Democrat as that. Their voting record doesn't change, but they change the party affiliation. And this goes back again to the problem, I think, of labeling. I don't think in the state of Alaska anyway, maybe on a national level it's different, but let's just focus on the state. The labeling in the state to this, it doesn't really matter anymore. Republicans, Democrats, whatever animal you wear on the lapel of your coat, it almost doesn't matter today. Really, it should be separated out into who is pro smaller government, pro private economy versus people who are pro public sector, bigger government, business, or a government economy. That's really the two different groups of people, regardless of what animal that they have on. That's really where the dividing line is, right? As you said it, Republicans have created a lot of the problems in this state. Some of the business as usual, bigger government Republicans, they've led us down this path to where we've got 10 years forecast of deficit spending and a taking of the PFD and living beyond our means. So really, the parties at this point are almost irrelevant because, in part, the Republican Party hasn't done a good enough job of policing its own.
Yeah. Well, I think we're limited on what we can do. Like people don't realize that the Republican Party, Democrat Party, they don't get to decide which candidates get to put an R behind their name. That's on the candidate. The candidate gets to declare with the Division of Elections what their political affiliation is. So, I mean, you can guarantee that the Arabella Group and the 1630 Fund and all of these other quasi-political party groups that are, part of our political environment right now, they control who is in their organization. They control who's representing them. They have some kind of structure set up, and they determine that helps them determine what their objectives are going to be and who they're going to support and their mission and all of that. So, but the Republican Party, we have elections within the party, and we pick our leaders, but the members themselves of the party can choose to just be a part of the party or not. And when you run for elected office, you can choose to call yourself a Republican or not. The party has no say over whether the candidate is actually a party member.
But that's true. But at the same time, we have seen the Republican Party not just, allowing because somebody said they're Republican. We've seen them actually support candidates who are part of the problem, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying that they have a total control over it, but I'm saying even when they have the opportunity to kind of stonewall or roadblock some candidates who are not upholding party values or guidelines, they in the past they've still done it, and it's I mean that's
in this election down here. My opponent is if he wins this election, it will be because there were moderate to left-leaning Republicans and Democrats get him elected. The conservatives are going to show up for me. The reality is we just had a District 7. This is airing a little bit of laundry, but we just had a District 7 meeting, and I showed them, I explained to the Republicans in that meeting that these are the things that your candidate, my opponent, is lying about. These are unfactual, untruth statements, and still you had 16 in the room that chose to endorse him. Okay, so
right,
we've got a problem inside the party of people who are not fully on board with Republican principles, and
right.
that leads to problems. So yes, I think we need to have a revamping. I think that the party members themselves need to have the power to protect their brand. Every other organization out there is able to protect their brand. They're able to decide if you're a business or a nonprofit, you have control over your membership of your organization. But with the Republican Party, we and just the political parties in general within the state, we don't have control over the majority of the membership of the party doesn't have control over the affiliation of the candidates. And so it leads to confusion and in some cases deception within the electorate. And I'll be honest with you, I've knocking on doors, I've ran into a lot of people that are like, okay, are you Republican or are you Democrat? So it still means something, or people are trying to make it mean something to them to help simplify what's happening in this complex environment. Let's start there. Are you do you say you're Republican or Democrat? Okay. Now we know basics, and now let's dive down into the details.
But I think that's working as intended, right? I mean, again, this obfuscation of what does being a Republican mean? It used to be synonymous with being conservative, smaller government. That's not what it means today. At every level, state, national, wherever, at every level, it doesn't mean the same thing that it used to. The parties have shifted from one side to from one area to another, and that's a bigger part of the problem.
And our founding fathers talked about this dynamic that we see across party lines, that our nation is not, our form of government is not something that's going to be able to survive when voters figure out that they can get right into the treasury and vote themselves money out of the treasury. And that's what we've been doing for far too long. Our national debt is unsustainable. Even here at the state level, we're saying, hey, you know what? We don't want to have a conversation about taxes. We're just going to keep taking the permanent fund earnings and spending it on state government. It's the worst thing we could be doing for the youngest, for the lowest income people, but we're just going to do that because it's easier.
Right. Until it's gone. And then we'll come for taxes, because we can't. I mean, the bottom line is the legislature over the last 25 years, I've been saying the same thing. We have a spending problem in this state. And I've been saying the same thing since 1999 when I first got on the air with this show. And I said, we have a spending problem in this state. And they kept saying, oh, no, it's a revenue problem. It's not a spending problem. It's a revenue problem. If you told me that in my household and where I was just spending more than I took in every year, would it be a revenue problem? Did I just need to get another job and drive pizzas at night, or what? Or was it that I just couldn't control my spending? The problem is that it's been a spending problem for so long. Now we have both a spending and a revenue problem. That's the continue, and it's not going to stop. They're going to take all of the permanent fund. It will, because it's like you said, it's the easiest bucket of money to pull from, with the least consequences at this point. And once that's gone, well, they'll look you in the eye and say, free rides die hard, sweetheart. Time for you to pay your fair share.
You need to pay your fair share. Yeah, that's exactly it. And there, you really have three main choices at that point, right? And we're only a couple of years off. If you're listening to our legislative finance people, we're only a few years off, maybe 3-4 years before that decision point comes to us. You're either going to have increased oil taxes, or you're going to have an income tax, or you're going to have a sales tax. Those are your basic options that you're going to have. What's not going to be on the table is significant cuts. I mean, we can take a look at the last decade, and of the last decade, only 6 years of that as I've been in the legislature. But in that short 6 years, we've added 650 some positions to state government, and we've increased our personnel services line, which is our pay and benefits, by about $600 million. So if our population is flat or in decline in our economy, our GDP has been in decline for a decade, why is our government growing?
Well, why can't we even eliminate positions that are unfilled? Right? We have funded positions and that are funded and have not been filled. Some of them as old as 10 years old. That one position, a couple positions in DOT, I think was like almost 10 years old. 2014 was the last time they filled that position, and a bunch of them that are 3 or 4 years old. Why are we got hundreds of positions. You attempted to close that loophole, to fill it, to put the money back in. Oh no, we can't do that. What is going on?
That's evidence, and that speaks to a larger management issue. It is far easier for us to keep a giant slush fund and grease the skids of government, right? We know that there's inefficiencies. We know that things aren't working well. We know that we need some pay studies. There's all of these list of things that management wise we should be doing, but we're not. We don't have time. We don't, whatever the excuse is, we're not going to do it. We've got this slush fund that helps us grease the skids and keep the machine working year after year after year, instead of doing the hard work that really needs to be done. And that's why I brought forward the Sunset Commission bill, and why Shelley Hughes brought it forward in the Senate, is we need a third party to come in and do an assessment of our government and provide recommendations to the legislature on what needs to change within our departments. The government lobby, is not going to change itself. The legislature doesn't have the capacity in 5 months to understand what the problems are down in the departments. We really do need to look at a third party independent look at how to improve our government if we want to see a reduction in the cost of our government, get it more efficient. It doesn't need to cost this much, right? Other states can figure out how to educate kids for a fraction of the cost. We spend 22 grand per student to educate kids in this state. I mean, I think a private education down here on the Kenai is somewhere less than 10 grand. So why does public education need to cost more than twice what it would cost for parents if they were spending the same money to go to a private institution?
Right.
A private institution has buildings. It has needs for feeding kids. I mean, it's frustrating to be looking at this from an adult position,
right,
from a responsible position, and say, look, we can't keep doing what we're doing because it's unsustainable and we need to change. And then try to get people on board, both inside the legislature and in the general public, to say, yes, here is a direction. Let's move in this direction. Just pick one direction and move in that direction.
Well, and I think you hit on the reason why, because this is the hard work. This is the uncomfortable part. This is the part where the politicians and the leaders would have to explain to their people why they're having to cut back on these expenditures, these government expenditures, why their favorite program might go away, why these things may not be available in the future. And that is hard work, and it's difficult, and you'll have to explain to people. But the bottom line is that if we don't do that, we'll create the doom loop, right? We'll create that loop where people are, well, now we've got the PFDs gone. Now there's taxes. Oh, the taxes have to go up, and that makes people leave, which spreads the burden on fewer people, which makes it tougher on those people. And then another cadre of people leave because it just spreads the burden more. And the next thing you know, we've got a mass exodus from the state because people can't afford to live here because we've grown the size of government way too much.
Well, I would correct you on one perspective, though. The people that will remain will have good paying state jobs. What you're driving out are the private sector
and the working class. Well, we know that already. The numbers are already, the Labor Department has already said that those that are moving out, we actually had an increase in people who are in that top 20 percentile. It's the people who are in the 20, 40, 60th percentile of income that are leaving because they can't afford it anymore.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. And that's, I mean, ultimately the expression of the people's government, right? So constitutionally, all government is derives its power from the governed, from the people, right? So the people created the permanent fund. The people created the taxes that come from the oil industry. They created the structures that we have, and they created the permanent fund dividend to share that wealth, that creation with themselves and with their government. And they set it up in statute to split it fairly. 50% goes to a dividend, 50% goes to a government. And what we have now is government lobby saying, well, that money's more important over here in the government than it is in the private sector. And we're forgetting that it's not the government's money.
Right.
The government is the servant, and the people are the ones that control the government. They control it. The money generated from the revenue off of oil development in the state of Alaska, that royalties is the people's money. It's not the government's money. It's the people's money. And they have set up the structures as the people want it.
Right.
Government is not the first entitlement. It is what the people say is the first entitlement.
Well, and it's the politicians' disease. We know better than you how this money should be spent. It's for your benefit, but we're going to spend it because you can't be trusted, essentially, is what they're saying. You can't be trusted to provide for yourself. Yeah, it's an arrogance. It's the politician's disease. Ben Carpenter is our guest. We're coming up on the next break. And sorry, I've been kind of driving the bus here. We're going to let Ben take over in the next segment and kind of give us an idea of what he thinks is important. I do want to talk a little bit about his fiscal plan and how I believe one thing. A fiscal plan is a single subject. If you're creating a long-term fiscal plan for a state, that is a single subject with many parts. We've got to get this whole single subject rule. We got to get this sussed out. And I want to talk about that next with Ben, but then we'll give him whatever else he wants to talk about. Up next, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Ben Carpenter is our guest here on the program. Yeah, Ben, I mean, this again, I've seen this and I've been watching this for a long time. And again, 25 years, this show, plus what I was watching before I actually started on the airwaves. My grandfather was my mentor in a lot of this stuff because he served in politics in Fairbanks and did all this and was active in the community. And we had conversations about this kind of stuff. But it has always been the politician's disease that we know better than you how to fill in the blank. Spend your money, raise your children, educate your children, dispose of your property, whatever it is. That is always that arrogance that you talked about from on high. Like somehow you got elected and that anointed you with some kind of divine knowledge that you know better than we how to do this now. And you see this disdain in, you know, some of the comments. I mean, the whether it's the comments of somebody like Jennifer Johnson saying, oh, you're just going to drink it up in the villages or whatever, or the people who are like, you're going to buy big screen TVs and take trips to Hawaii or whatever, or you're going to do hookers and blow with it or whatever it is, right? Somehow it is the disdain for we, the little people. We can't be trusted. We're the children. We can't be trusted with our own money. They've got to guide us. And that's really kind of the whole overarching principle we're talking about here, right? They've got to guide us. They've got to guide the economy. They can't let the economy and the free market work on its own. They've got to do all these things.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. This is what mankind has done to mankind for generations and generations. Alaskans and Americans, we've just been really comfortable with our form of government. And I think we're maybe for the first time in some of our the generations that are alive right now, we're seeing some cracks and some fraying along the edges and the seams, and it's causing us to ask some questions. And I hope that's good. I hope we get back to some foundational principles, and maybe through better candidates and that increases or resolves some of the political problems, negative campaigns and things like that, because you've got better candidates who act honorably, right?
Right. No, it is. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, I have to keep my sanity, and I just say I'm a Chiefs fan, and that helps me out at the end of the day. I've been a Chiefs fan since the early 90s, and it just so happens that I have something to be happy about.
Is that baseball or football? I'm not a sports guy. It's football, right?
That's football. That's the NFL.
I knew that. I just thought I always love to poke fun of myself because I could care less about sports, and I'd like, is that the one that they do the hoop and the thing, or but there's other things going on. I mean, Ron just mentioned something in the chat room, and I know Jeannie talked about it yesterday. Now they're trying to shut down Aurora Borealis Charter School down in the Peninsula, the #1 rated school in the state, and they want to shut it down. You know, again, it's the power of the unions and the government saying, we know better than you. I mean, the parents decided, the parents got the charter school going. They're the ones that are involved. They're the ones that are making it all right. It's the #1 school in the state. And now they're like, no, we need to shut it down because they hate the competition.
Yeah, I attended the committee meeting for the school board committee meeting that was reviewing the charter. and there wasn't a empty seat in the House. The entire assembly chambers was filled by parents from Aurora Borealis and homeschoolers who were there to watch what happened with that committee meeting. And the committee unanimously moved that application forward, renewal application forward for the full school board's decision. And I fully expect that the school board's going to pass that and renew their charter.
It's just surprising that there was even a question on it, though, Ben. That's the thing. You're the number one school in the state. You have the most parental involvement. You've got more people, it's all the pluses, all the gold stars. And then you're like, well, maybe we shouldn't renew this.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's lashing out. It's lashing out by people who don't want to see the answers, right? You've got parents that are leaving the school district for a reason, and you don't want to face the reality. You don't want to do the hard thing of change, of improving your product so that parents will want to participate. And frankly, you don't want parents to actually have control. And that's why our charter schools are performing at a higher level, is because you've got parents that are responsible for the outcomes of the schools. Right. You want to improve schools across the state of Alaska? You give parents the responsibility for the outcomes of the schools.
Yeah. No, parental involvement is the ultimate. Like I've always said, homeschooling is the ultimate parent student teacher ratio, right? Because I mean, they are taking direct responsibility. That's why that's worked so well. But and I've said for years, the something fundamentally broken in our education system, and nobody wants to admit something is fundamentally flawed and that it needs to be rethought from the ground up. And nobody wants to do that because they're comfortable where they're at. And if only they had more money, they could make it happen. Yada, yada, yada. Right?
The last person is going to be a union member.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Ben Carpenter is our guest. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We're going to do a quick little part about the single subject rule. Can we get beyond it? I mean, they've been doing it for all these other things. They've been allowing more than one subject on ballot measures and everything else. What? We're going to talk about that real quick and then give Ben the floor. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yep. Back to it now. Final segment. Ben Carpenter is our guest. We're going to continue with him here through this final segment. Quick question. The single subject rule is kind of a sore subject at this point because, Ben, you've been trying to push the Fiscal Policy Working Group's plan, which is a full fiscal plan, has a bunch of different parts, taxes, revenues, cuts, all this kind of stuff that's all involved in it all at once. And people keep pushing back on you and say, well, no, you got to pass one thing at a time. You got to push. It's a single subject. But a fiscal policy is a single subject, and there's lots of parts to that. We have lots of bills that have a single subject header that has lots of different changes in laws that all fall under the one subject header. This sounds like and feels like it's on purpose, right? We've got ballot measures that have got multiple components, supposed to be single subject rule, but we got one ballot measure that has, an increase in the minimum wage and a sick leave and a component that talks about, public and or political and religious speech. I mean, where's the single subject rule there? All of a sudden, it's like when it's convenient, it's single subject. And again, they don't want to make these changes. And this is a problem. How can we get to this being one? And I know the constitutional amendments have to be outside of that, but everything else could be in one bill. Could it not?
I think so. And this boils down to what is the lawyer's opinion that is advising the legislature. That is what this boils down to. And in fairness to the lawyer, they're looking at it in what's going to happen when the legislature passes this bill and then somebody sues and says, hey, they did the wrong thing because this isn't a single subject. So there's got to be a plausible defense for why it doesn't violate the single subject rule. So I think that if you put a solution to the PFD problem and a solution to the revenue problem in a single bill and sent it forward and said this is a fiscal bill, fiscal plan bill, well, then it should pass the common sense test of you need both from a financial levers perspective and from a political perspective, you need both of these things to be able to be taken care of all at the same time. to find agreement, right? This is what the legislature wants, to be able to find agreement on these issues. You're right. You can't throw a constitutional amendment in a bill. It's two different structures. One's a resolution and one's a bill. They have different vote requirements, and they go on a different path. Like, for example, the resolution doesn't go to the governor for signature. It goes to the people for a vote. So those would have to be separate. So your constitutional spending limit would have to be a separate resolution. Your constitutional PFD to say that there will be a dividend, that's going to have, just like HDR 7 was, that would have to be a separate resolution. And then you could talk about combining your
all the rest of the components, right?
Into a single bill.
The 6 or 7 other components, the cuts, the spending, the taxes, those kind of things, those could all be in another single bill, because again, it's fiscal policy. That's what it's about. Its single subject is creating a long-term fiscal plan for stability. That would be a single subject.
And what we would, one of the things that you could use as an example or justification is to point to the Fiscal Policy Working Group that provided the legislature recommendations at the request of the legislature, mind you. And now we're acting upon those recommendations. And so you're combining the recommendations into a single bill that is realistic for the legislature to wrap its head around. One bill goes through multiple committees, goes through the committee process. It is modified as necessary, but it has multiple components of this fiscal plan, and then it comes to the floor for an up or down vote.
Right. And because that helps, because if one part of the plan gets changed in committee and another plan needs to be tweaked, if they're in one bill, it can all be done, homogeneously together, versus if you have separate bills, one bill could pass and then something else could pass, which could totally change what happened to the first. It needs to be in one bill. All right. I'm sorry. It's a pet peeve of mine, and I wanted to get that out. Ben, final thoughts, anything that you want to cover here? I know that, again, we've been talking about the deception in the voting process, things that have been said about you that are just totally untrue. And if you want to run through those again, I don't think that would hurt. Anything else you want to talk about here?
Well, I think that voters down here ought to really understand when somebody says, hey, I'm for increase in spending on education, and I'm for a defined benefits plan that's going to increase spending, and I've got all these good things that I'm going to support, and you ask who pays for it, and the answer is, well, we'll just have to take it out of the dividend. That's the only answer that my opponent can give, because he says he's not for taxes. Okay, so you can't be for additional spending and a larger dividend. This is the deception that is preying on people's ignorance. You cannot both agree that you're going to increase spending on your projects and not have a way to pay for it. So in every other state and every other legislature, the conversation is, if you have an increase in spending, then you have to find the money from some sort of tax or some sort of somewhere. You have to find it from somewhere. And that somewhere in our current legislature is permanent fund earnings. It is the only thing that is partitioned, and some of it is available for government spending and some is not, it is not currently being spent on government, but it could be if we decide to. And that is the dividend. So whenever someone says, hey, we need to increase spending on this because it's really important, well, then what they're saying is we're going to reduce the size of the dividend to do that, because that's the only option we have right now. So if that's okay with Alaskans, that we're going to give up our dividend in order for larger government, then you have to ask the question after that, well, who pays when the dividend's gone? That may not be the question this year for this budget, but it's going to be the question eventually in some budget. What we are doing is setting ourselves up for failure and higher taxation and higher cost government.
How can you say that you're not for taxes and yet you're all for taking the PFD, which is in essence a tax? I mean, it may not be
exactly right.
It may not be an official tax, but it has the effect of a tax. If you're taking the PFD without any representation or anything else, and that's the people's money, it's a tax. So how can you say I'm against taxes, but I'm going to take your PFD without your say so?
Yes. The way that you can justify that to yourself is to say that the permanent fund earnings is government money. It's not your money as a citizen of Alaska, right? That's where it comes into the fallacy comes in, right? Because as soon as you've bought into the argument that says, oh, permanent fund earnings, that's just government money. Well, then that means you just don't understand foundationally who's in charge, because the government is created by the people. So everything that exists within government is the people's. It's the people's first because we created it constitutionally. So if there's money set aside coming out of the permanent fund, that's the earnings, and we've created structure to do that for us, then we get to decide what to do with that. And by statute, half of that is supposed to go to the people. We have said we want half of it to come to us. The other half, the government have. We're lying to ourselves. We're deceiving people who don't know any better when we say, well, that's government money and we need it. We need it for these programs. They're too much. Okay, well, that just realize that you're taking money out of the private sector. You're taking it out of people's hands to pay for your government. You don't want to call it a tax. Okay, fine. You don't have to call it a tax, but everybody else can call it a tax because that's what it is. You are taking money out of the private sector and spending it on government.
And of course, the big problem here is because of the way Alaska receives its revenue, we have a complete and total disconnect between the public and the private economies. And so there is no ramifications for killing the private economy. There's just no, it doesn't matter.
And I don't know how much time we've got, but that's the whole point of the fiscal plan that I have put forward. Put a spending limit in place that is tied to the size of our economy so that when our economy grows, our GDP grows, our government can spend more. Constitutionally protect the dividends so it can't go away, and reorder our taxes so that Alaskans are paying less taxes. Tap into your visitors to the state and have them help pay for your state services. And you, Alaskans, will end up paying less in the long run. You will have more money in your pocket at the end of the day if we restructure how we're doing things.
Ben Carpenter, 30 seconds here. Final thought.
Well, if you got questions, you can call me 690-6494, and bencarpenterforalaska.com is my website. I'll be at the coffee shop this morning. Just drew a blank on the name, shifted directions there. In Soldotna, if you want to come talk.
Okay. All right. Ben Carpenter, thank you so much, folks. We're out of time tomorrow. Harold Borbridge will be joining us, and then Michaela Emsweiler with No on 2. It's all directly tomorrow. The Michael Duke Show. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, Ben. Sorry about that. I got going there a little bit. Let's I'll give you the final bite here. Final bite at the apple. And thank you for coming on. And you know what? Thank you for showing a little bit of that frustration, because I think it's important for people to realize when somebody is so blatantly false about what they're doing and they have to basically besmirch somebody else, that says a lot. And all you have to do is point to the lies and say, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, here's all the things he said, and here's what's actually happened. Here's what I'm actually stand for. He's just lying, and that's wrong, and it must be desperation at that point. So, I mean, I appreciate you coming on and showing some of that passion for that. So anyway, I'll give you a Northern Lights Espresso, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is where it's going to be at. All right. So your final thoughts here. You get the last bite.
We don't need to get down and wallow with the pigs, because we just get muddy. The pigs like it. So I'm trusting and I'm relying upon my fellow countrymen to see through the lies and the deception. If we're at a point in our nation's history where the electorate can't see through the lies, then I'm probably not going to be able to do this, to communicate to you very well enough to change things, right? To get you to see the truth. The problem isn't with me. The problem is with our society in general if we are going to be so easily deceived. So my call and my ask is that people do their due diligence and question when somebody is talking, saying smack about another person. Well, then is that just rumor, or is there any truth? Because I can tell you that when people call and talk to me and I'm able to communicate and have a genuine conversation, and it's not just a sound bite on the radio,
right,
they come away thinking entirely different. So this is a turning point for our country and our nation is to, are we going to participate, and are we going to do the hard things to know the people that were sent into office, or are we going to continue sending people just because they have a letter behind their name?
Right. And I think
that is what's at stake.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too is that there's a lot of people out there, especially conservatives, who are so frustrated with everything that's gone on over the last 8, 9, 10 years that a lot of them have kind of thrown their hands up into the air and just walked away to say, I'm just not going to do it anymore. It doesn't make any sense. Your vote does count. Your vote counts. Your vote matters. So even if you've been frustrated, or somebody who said that they've been frustrated, now's the time to grab them by the short hairs and say, you got to go vote. This is buying into the lie. If you're thinking that it gets better by stepping out, then you're lying to yourself, right? I've served in the military. I've been in places in the world where they don't have what we have. They cannot trust their government. Matter of fact, if they want their government to do something, they got to bring money to pay that government official for him to get to do something. I can tell you that after serving in the Middle East and coming back, getting off the plane and knowing without a doubt that you get down on the ground and you kiss the ground that the plane landed on, and you thank God that you're born an American and that we've got this system that we've got. Imperfections and everything, right? It's human nature, but it only gets better if good people step out and get frustrated and can't participate. Well, then you're left over with people who are lesser. Yeah, so absolutely.
It's the best thing that we've got going.
All right. Ben Carpenter, candidate for Senate District D. Ben, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, it's good to talk with you. Good luck in the next, again, we're just 10 days, 12 days away right now from making that decision. Let's hope that your faith in the electorate is true, and that people get out there and people, early vote, go bank your vote right now, get things ready to go, get it all squared away. And we appreciate you coming on board, Ben. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for all the hard work.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's good to be with you again.
All right. As always, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for being part of it today. All right. Again, don't forget 9 to 11 at, I'm sorry, I just lost it here on my screen. 9 to 11 at the espresso shop. Where is it, Jeannie? It's right there. Northern Lights Espresso, 9 to 11 a.m. Northern Lights Espresso down there in Kenai Soldotna. So just Google that and go over there and talk to Ben. And if you got questions and you heard this stuff, that the crap that Bjorkman put out, go ask Ben directly. Go talk to his face. Go look at him and say, hey, what's going on? Go do it. Go do it. You can't refuse to vote. Ron just said 50% of Christians and 50% of gun owners will refuse to vote. I won't refuse to vote. Even if I have concerns about the election system, even if I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give them an excuse. I'm going to go have my say one way or the other, because you can't bitch about it if you don't go participate. I mean, you can, but I lose a lot of respect for you. If you're going to complain and you didn't even participate, shut your filthy pie hole. Just step back and go, just knock it off. All right. Well, that does it for today. Again, don't forget, we're off on Friday and Monday. Tomorrow, Harold Barbridge will be joining us. Oh, that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. I might be a little adversarial tomorrow morning. And then Michaela Emsweiler is going to be joining us to talk about yes on 2. Sorry, yes on 2. I've got no on 1, yes on 2. It is confusing, isn't it? It's no on 1, yes on 2. That's what you do. All right. We got to go. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.